Just want to make sure all the technology is working properly. If there's any problems with the audio or seeing the screen or the slides or anything, just let me know by typing something into the chat or the questions there in the GoToWebinar control panel that came up when you logged on. Looks like there's still a few people joining, but I want to be respectful of everybody's time. Hopefully, I will have you back to work here within about 50-55 minutes. I'm going to try and leave a little bit of time at the end for your questions and answering some of those. But we'll go ahead and get started. So today's presentation is too many wasted leads. We're going to focus on how to automate and manage your lead response and follow through. Just to introduce myself real quick, I'm Craig Klein. I'm the CEO of Sales Nexus. I've been managing, hiring, firing, training salespeople for over 17 years and have been the CEO of Sales Nexus for 15 years. Through that, I've become dangerous at email marketing. I'm still very much a sales guy, but know a little bit about what works in email marketing, especially in the context of supporting sales efforts. And recently I became an author, published my first book at the end of last year. And I should apologize. Some of you got an invitation. Mallory Garber was also going to be on the webinar with me, but she wasn't able to make it at the last minute. So she's more of a marketing automation expert with experience with a lot of different marketing automation tools, but she just wasn't able to be here today. So I will be carrying the load for her. So the reason we're having this conversation, I believe, is because we're all spending a lot of money and time to generate, acquire, connect with leads, and it's expensive, right? The average cost, according to some research from HubSpot, is $250 per B2B lead that you're spending on average. So that's a lot of money. And, you know, the heartburn is that I know from our customers, the people I talk to a lot, you just don't feel like the sales team is treating them as though they're quite that precious, right? That they're not getting the right follow through. And it's not just the sales team. I don't want to throw them under the bus, of course. Maybe they're just not getting enough marketing messages, or both. And things are just kind of getting lost and falling through the cracks. So that's what we're going to talk about and address today. I'm going to, real quick, I'm going to try to get to know you a little bit. I have a few little quick polls that I'd like to take your temperature. Let's see. First, what percentage of your leads are getting the right kind of follow-up? You should see that on your screen. And once you guys have answered that question, it'll let me know, and I'll move on to the next one. Okay, so it looks like about 70% of you are saying 25 to 50% are getting good follow-up. So that's about 2/3 of you. Let's launch the next one here. How long does it take you to respond to your leads? Okay. Looks like almost all of you are saying it's 30 minutes to an hour or more than an hour. It's kind of evenly split there. And let me launch one more. Okay. How many touches are your leads typically getting? Touches meaning calls, emails, direct mail, whatever you're doing to engage the leads. Okay, so 50% of you are saying 1 to 3 touches, and another 25% are saying 4 to 5. So almost everybody, it's 5 or fewer. Okay, so good. Well, not that those are necessarily good answers, but I'm glad that it seems that you guys fit the profile of most businesses. And we're going to talk about how you can improve on some of those numbers and why that's important. So hopefully this will be a valuable time spent for you. Okay, so let's get rolling. Before I jump totally into everything, one more quick note. I want to address your questions, and sometimes, you know, in the moment while I'm talking about that subject is the best time to do that. In the GoToWebinar control panel there, you'll see where it says questions, and you can type your questions right there, and I'll be watching that, and we'll try to respond to them as best I can as we go. So definitely let me know what's on your mind. Okay, so here's just some statistics. I find that a lot of companies kind of feel like email marketing, oh, that's kind of yesterday, it's kind of going away. Actually, it's not. It's growing just as fast as any other digital marketing channel, in fact, faster than most of them. So you can see here it's grown by 20% annually. Awesomely for the Obama campaign. It's just simply, hey. So sometimes the unexpected works. Okay, so here's some more statistics. What are the top challenges that cause you to struggle with marketing, with meeting your objectives? Access to customer data. Yeah, right? If you're trying to email anybody, having a list and keeping it clean and knowing how to segment and all of that, that's a big deal. And that's, everybody struggles with that. Marketing alignment with sales. Well, that's a perennial subject. And yes, we all struggle with that. Fragmented marketing systems. Yeah, that's a big problem too. We're going to talk about that today. And limitations with current technologies, skills and expertise. You know, this is basically what we're going to talk about today. We need good lists. We need marketing and sales working together, that the way we nurture and respond to our leads should be in sync between the two departments. And we need technology that works, but it's not so complex that, you know, we have to become a guru to make it work for us. What we need is consistent, proactive, thorough follow-up to our leads, right? A few sales calls, a few marketing messages, and ongoing touches that, you know, nurture people even if they're not gonna engage with us right now. Seems pretty simple. Recently I was talking to a colleague at a major ad agency here in Houston, and she was saying, you know, everybody is spending a lot of money on inbound marketing campaigns. They're trying to drive traffic to their websites. And she gets the sense a lot that some of them even believe that someday, if they do their inbound marketing just right, they won't need salespeople anymore. And in my experience, especially in the B2B world, you're going to end up having a salesperson chase those leads down. And of course, the bigger the deal, the more complex the deal, the more you need that salesperson. But even in simple situations, if you're trying to meet revenue goals, you're going to invest in salespeople to go after that revenue and not just let the emails and other marketing passively do it. That's just a fact of the real world. And we need to factor that into our plans and make the two things complement each other. Okay, so here's the number one thing that I see people just don't get. And we talked about this, where you guys addressed this in the poll. You're taking too long to respond to these leads. That's the fact. Here's the stats. You can Google it yourself. It's all over the place. This research has been out there for quite a while that you can see here. This is from 2007, but it hasn't changed. In fact, if anything, it's gotten worse. You got to contact these people quickly. This is response time. So, and your success rate. Your success rate of just talking to them is 100 times better at 5 minutes in response time, going out to 30 minutes. So you have a much higher probability of contacting them. It's always just made sense to me. They just filled out a form on your site or downloaded something, and they're sitting at their computer. You know that, and they're not otherwise engaged. So if you can jump on them right then and there, you're going to get them on the phone. Your qualification rate is also 21 times higher if you contact them within 5 minutes or 30 minutes. Another little quick anecdote. A lot of times people fill out a form on multiple vendor sites, right? You might Google, quality plumber, trying to get somebody to come fix a stopped up drain. And you're not just going to request info from one of them. You're going to probably do 2 or 3, so that whoever calls you first is going to get your business. Well, that's the way it works in your business also. So whoever calls first wins. Multiple touches. We talked about this, or the polls addressed this, right? It's marketing 101, right? There's all kinds of research about it takes 5 or 7 or 8 or 10 touches for somebody to purchase. A brand has to touch the customer in 5 to 10 different ways before they make the purchase decision. Well, if you're only calling them 2 or 3 times, that's not enough. So we can combine in marketing automation and augment what our salespeople are able to do, make it faster and provide more touches. So, what I'm talking about is some kind of campaign that looks something like this, right? Day one, we're going to call them, and then we're going to email them, and then we're going to try them again if we didn't reach them the first time, right? Maybe we give them a day off, maybe we don't. That's up to you. But then we're going to call them again, and we're going to email them, and then, continue with a combination of both for several days. This timeline of how many days it runs out, that's up to you. Depends on your business and, the types of customers that you're working with. In some cases, it should be, multiple touches every day for just a few days, and then you're done. In some businesses, it should be very spread out over maybe weeks or months. But one way or the other, you got to get those touches in. It can be any combination of different stuff, including print and, direct mail. So email them, call them, do the things that you can do quickly, but then also begin the process of putting a little package together to put in the mail to them that's going to show up next week. And that still works with a lot of people. Or we may want to have processes that are sort of contingent on different things, right? If they answer some question somehow, either on the phone or by clicking on something on the website or in something they receive from us, and then that changes the lead response that they're going to get, right? The problem is, if anybody that's ever tried to do this, is you end up with something that becomes super complex, super fast, especially if you get the salespeople involved in figuring it out, right? Because they are going to think of every customer they've ever dealt with and all the little nuances of their situation and all the contingencies. And it's just, you end up with this that you don't just buy these tools and plug them together and make this kind of stuff work. You are going to need to devote some serious time to learning how to do this. It may take months, maybe even a year. It may take a few weeks of training. You may probably, what most people end up doing is bringing in some kind of consultant to help them do it all. So it starts getting expensive and time consuming. So that's what we're going to address today. We're going to talk about strategies for managing and automating lead management, how to create effective content and emails, and how to hold salespeople accountable to doing their part of the job. Okay, so first of all, is all this worth it, right? What are the results supposed to be? So follow me, if you don't mind, on some numbers here. You know, let's assume that we're getting 200 inbound leads a month, and we close 40 of those. So that's 20% close rate. So that means every month we have 160 lost or cold leads that didn't buy anything. Well, after 6 months, if all we do is take those 160 and put them in our little hopper and stay in touch with them with 2 emails a month, that's 960 leads after 6 months. And of course, it keeps getting bigger every month. But at 960, if we're sending 2 emails a month and we get industry standard benchmark response rates, 1 to 2% click rate, then that means we've got 20 to 38 newly warm leads every month. So we were getting 200. Now we're adding between 10 and 20% new leads back into the funnel, right? Well, I can tell you also from firsthand experience that your close rate with these newly warmed up leads, their sort of second engagement with you, it's going to be higher, not lower. But let's assume it's the same. So this should translate into a 10 to 20% increase in sales without doing anything else. No new salespeople, no new ad campaigns. So this is a way more affordable way to grow sales. The problem is we got to fix the leaks, right? Most of you have probably seen some version of this type of funnel, the leaky funnel, you know, where typically we're talking about, you know, salespeople just kind of drop the ball and don't, you know, they forget about certain leads and don't provide the right kind of follow-up. But today we're talking about the marketing automation system dropping the ball per se, and the salespeople dropping the ball in certain circumstances as well. And the way I see that typically happening is it's like you end up with these 2 different funnels, right? You got your marketing automation funnel, and it's disconnected from the CRM or the sales funnel. And that just means some things never make it out of the marketing funnel into the sales funnel. And they sort of just get lost in there. So it's like you got this crack in your overall funnel, and there's money or leads just dripping out the sides right there at that crack, if you can kind of get the visual. So Again, 10 to 20% increase in sales is what's on the table here. So you have to decide, either you're going to invest in some technology that will work for you and be manageable for you, or invest in some people. That's the other alternative, right? It doesn't have to be technology. It could be a person and some spreadsheets. You know, that's the way they used to do it. You know, really well run, you know, lead gen, sales follow-up operation. It was lists that were printed out and put on salespeople's desks every day. Well, luckily now we have technology to make that a little easier, but still, one way or the other, you got to figure out a way to do it. And I'm not telling you today that it's my belief that you can't do it without technology. You can, but you're going to have to plan to allocate the right, you know, level of staff to take care of getting the right list to the right people. The idea is we want to use the marketing automation to identify who deserves a call right this minute, right? Set appointments for them, but also continue to send out emails to everybody on their list, whether they set an appointment or not, just essentially nurturing their leads, right? And that worked, you know, that was good. And then a few months later, I was touching base with him, and he tells me that what he had started doing is training his salespeople, his telemarketers, to call the people that were clicking on those emails. And he found that if he did that very quickly, they called them real quickly, that they were able to set appointments at a very high rate. And that had just changed everything for him. So it wasn't about adding some new service for his clients, but it was more about just being more effective at the primary objective of setting appointments. He told me about that. Whoa, okay, I never thought about that. And sure enough, we've done it ourselves now. We've worked with a lot of clients to help them do it, and it works every time it's tried. The trick is timeliness. The other part is you got to have an email that does the job for you, that sort of gets, sort of diagnoses what the customer's need is. You know, you got to have some good content that's engaging to the customer. You want to identify what their interest or need is. But you do not need to waste a whole bunch of time designing beautiful emails. You don't need to call up some marketing firm and spend thousands of dollars and weeks creating some beautiful campaign, writing a whole bunch of beautiful, wonderful copy. This should not consume a lot of time. In fact, the best way to do this is to just start doing something and measure it, and then adjust and invest in the things that the data tells you are really working. All we're trying to do is get the right person in the crowd to raise their hand and say, hey, you need to call me right now, right? So we need to know who is our ideal customer. And, you know, what's the pain that they have that our product or service can solve? Because if you can identify that, I mean, for those of you that come from a sales background, you probably know the term pain. If you know what your customer's pain is that you really are targeting, that you can address for them, then creating really simple but effective emails is super easy. In fact, we've got a whole video series on our website about how to do this, but it's basically just, you know, let's say we're in the, you know, the HR recruiting business, right? is your hiring process stalled? As opposed to, are you hiring salespeople? So are you hiring salespeople? Every freaking recruiter out there sends that email, right? But if what you do specifically is you help people sort of unstick or accelerate the process and make it flow better, then that's what you want in your subject line. Because if that person responds to that, they're basically telling you that they're a good prospect for you. And then in the content itself, it could be, download 3 ways to unstick your sales hiring process, or 2 mistakes that stall your sales hiring. Just write copy, write emails that really target those pains. Here's a couple of really simple examples just to kind of hammer home the concept that this does not need to be, super beautiful content. These are 2 emails that I've just found on the internet that performed extremely well. So this is a really good example of somebody that's, leveraging some kind of group. It could be even a LinkedIn group, right? You might go to a LinkedIn group that's related to your industry or something like that. And then the folks that you can communicate with via email or via LinkedIn, you say, hey, I'm in the so-and-so group too, and I wanted to reach out. And then you have just a sentence or 2 about what you do. And that works, or here's another one. Just tried calling you. I just tried giving you a call and left your voicemail. Please give me a call back at this phone number. Send me a note if you get the chance. See this 66% reply rate. That's crazy good. So this is something that, you look at it and you think, well, that would be cool if my salespeople would send something like that when they're trying to get somebody on the phone. But what if you put it into your campaign so that while they're trying to get them on the phone, the system's automatically sending this for them, in between calls. You call them on Wednesday, send this email on Thursday, and then call them again on Friday or whatever. So here's a couple more examples. Like we were talking about. Is your pain causing some negative result, right? That's a generic way of writing a subject line. You plug in your pain and the negative result, and there's your subject line. It's not going to get opened a lot necessarily, kind of depends on your list and everything. But the people that do open it and do click on it are really telling you, man, you need to talk to me right now. I have a problem you can help me with, right? Is dealing with this pain keeping you from reaching your goals? If so, watch this video. If I click and watch that video, I got that pain. You need to talk to me. Sales scripter Michael is the CEO of the company I was mentioning earlier in the telemarketing business. This is the email that he created. You can see 3 short sentences, or I guess it's more like 5 or 6 sentences, but 3 short paragraphs, and it performs extremely well for him. So again, write some emails like this, start the process, and then measure and see what's working. And if you find that you've got something, a combination that seems to be working really well, great. Maybe now you want to spend some marketing dollars on, creating some better content, having some design done, that kind of thing. But wait until you know. Here's just another example. Very simple email. Here's the pain. How we got 127% increase in click-throughs. Well, if I'm a digital or email marketer, you just got my attention. Okay, so the test and measure part, just to make sure we're all on the same page. The subject line is measured by the open rate. So your open rate tells you, did your subject line work? That's because when people are reading emails, they're scanning their inbox, and if they don't recognize the from address, your email address, then they're going to look at the subject to decide whether or not to even open it. In other words, if your subject line does not get their attention, they're never going to see what's in the email. They're just going to delete it out of hand. And then the click rate measures the content in the email. So I've opened but then my salespeople need to know what to say and ask and know how to separate a great lead from a tire kicker. Okay, so just some more examples of some measurement. You know, here's just some stats from a campaign that we use in our system. You know, here's the general email marketing type stats that you're going to get with really any system. And then down here, what we do is we take every email in the campaign. So this is a, you know, an ongoing sort of drip campaign. And we look at the open rates and the click rates with each one. So, you know, just to kind of point out how you use this data a little bit, you can see here, I mentioned earlier, a 1 to 2% click rate is decent. That's about what you should expect. A 10 to 20% open rate is about what you should expect. If you're beating that, then you're doing really good. Well, I got a few emails that are doing really good, right? Here I got one, well, my open rate's okay, but I got zip for clicks. So I got a problem with the email itself, not the subject line necessarily. And down here, I've got emails that have really good open rates. So the subject line's great, but still not getting clicks. So here, I know for sure I need to look at the email itself and change the appearance of it, how it's written, whatever. Here, it may be a little bit of both. Okay, so now let's talk about the salespeople and how to make sure they're doing their part of this. So I think, first of all of this stuff that we've talked about so far, it's kind of goes in one ear and out the other when you're talking to salespeople. You know, they're kind of, that's the typical divide between sales and marketing, right? They're sort of like, well, that's you know, that's you guys' problem. Just get me on the phone with a lead, right? And I'll work my magic. So I can't emphasize enough how you really have to work on communicating what's going on to the sales team, because it's going to take a few times generally for them to get it and understand. You can involve them in the process. That's helpful, of course. They sit there and send emails to clients all the time, right? When they're calling somebody and he's just not answering the phone, but he looks like a great lead on paper, they're probably sending their own emails trying to get them on the phone, and they can probably tell you, here's some things that have worked pretty well for me. Well, that may be good to include into your lead nurturing campaigns. One way or the other, two things they need to know, and they need to know that they're going to be measured on. And that's the immediacy of the response. We talked about that before. They've got to make that call quickly. The quicker they call, the more successful they'll be. There's no doubt about it. Same thing about multiple touches. They can't just call that one time and maybe again a week later. That's not good enough, right? It's got to be pretty consistent every few days for a while. Then one kind of fun tip that I've always enjoyed that actually works really well is tell them to fire them, you know? So that's basically, you've called them 3 or 4 times and you left voicemails and sent emails and they're just not responding. So the last voicemail you send or leave, you say, you know, hey, Bob, this is Craig with Sales Nexus. I've called you a few times trying to discuss how we can help you with your lead nurturing and sales management and so on and so forth. and haven't been able to get you on the phone, left you a few voicemails, sent you some emails, I'm going to assume at this point that you're just not interested, or you found some other solution, or this isn't a priority right now, and I'm going to take you off my call list. If I can help you with anything, please call me at blah, blah, blah. Give me your phone number. So the key phrase there is, I'm going to take you off my call list. People don't want to be taken off the list, and they'll call you back, or they'll grab one of your emails and hit reply and say, hey, I got your voicemail. Don't give up on me. I've just been busy. Let's talk next Tuesday. It does work pretty well. Okay, so we have to educate the salespeople and let them know what's important about this. And then we've got to automate the process, right? I can't tell you how common it is that I'll be talking to a new client getting started with our solution, and I say, well, when somebody fills out the form on your website to download your white paper or sign up for a trial or whatever, what happens to those leads? And the sales manager will say, well, I get an email, and then, a couple times a day, I'll grab those and send them out to the, whatever salesperson happens to be around that minute. Well, right there, you've already lost, right? If you go back to that curve we were looking at before, surely that sales manager is not sitting there distributing leads every 2 or 3 minutes, right? More typically, those leads are getting sent over to a salesperson maybe an hour or two, or maybe even half a day after they came in, and then they sit in the salesperson's inbox for who knows how long. Could be a couple hours, could be half a day. Nobody knows, right? So the leads are getting called maybe the same day. If we're lucky, probably the next day, typically. That's just, you're just shooting your marketing budget in the foot. So you've got to automate that piece of it. And it's not that hard. You don't have to go spend a whole bunch of money on really advanced, crazy systems for that. There's ways to have the email that your web form sends go to a list of people. That's pretty simple. Any web guy can figure that out for you. There's simple, lead management systems that'll just take that lead and automatically allocate it out to a salesperson based on different rules. It could be a round robin. It could be based on territories, things like that. But that's not rocket science. And that's one of the two make or break things in responding to leads that are coming in. Get them in a salesperson's hands and let them respond quickly. And then track it all and hold them accountable, right? Measure, how long did it take for us to call this lead? Measure that on a per salesperson basis, maybe even a per campaign basis. You might have different divisions and territories and product lines and groups of people associated with each of those things. You might want to break it down that way. You want to track the number of attempts they're making for each lead. And are they dispositioning the leads properly? I mean, that's key also, right? Marketing needs to know how many of these leads did we never talk to versus how many of them did we talk to and they just weren't a good lead versus, the awesome leads, right? And we need to break that down again by salesperson, by territory, and by marketing campaign, right? I can tell you firsthand, when we first started doing pay-per-click years and years ago, one of the things we discovered is that we were shooting our salespeople in the foot in some cases, where we would start a campaign focusing on a certain keyword or group of keywords, thinking that that was a brilliant idea. And maybe it would work great in the sense that we'd get a lot of conversions and leads, and our salespeople would be super busy for a few days, and they're going, hey man, this is awesome. We got all these leads. It's great. And then, a week or two later, you're sitting down with the salespeople and you're looking at the pipeline and the proposals that they've done recently, and you see that it's gone down. You're like, what's going on? We've had all these leads. Why aren't we doing any proposals, having meetings, etc.? Well, it turns out that while it was easy to get conversions for people that were searching for that particular thing, they just weren't the right fit for us. And so we were drowning our salespeople in leads that were already unqualified. So you need to know what the salespeople are saying about the leads on a per campaign basis, right? And anybody that's ever wrestled with the whole, Marketo and Salesforce or some other combination of a marketing automation and CRM solution knows that pulling that together, that's kind of the holy grail. It's very difficult to do. That's why with Sales Nexus, we just put it all together. That's one thing that makes easy. So these are the three things that you have to do with the salespeople, and you got to communicate it to them, right? Just like this, have a scoreboard, share it with the salespeople. Let them compete, not just for sales numbers, but on these types of numbers, right? Throw out some rewards for the best, the fastest lead response for a day or a week, or, the highest average number of attempts per lead in a month. Incentivize the right kind of behavior. Okay, so we were talking about dispositioning the lead. So I just threw together some examples here. This is kind of a messy slide, but it's basically, you just want to have some drop downs and stuff so that the salespeople can point and click while they're on the phone with one of these leads and categorize them for you, right? So, it might be really simple, like I just want to know how many employees they got and who's their current supplier. Those are the two main things that tell me, are they qualified for our product or service, right? Are they a good lead for me? Great. Then make sure those fields are front and center. So if I'm a salesperson on the phone, logged into my CRM, point, click, fill in two fields, done, right? Now you can use that to measure the performance of that campaign, right? But the other thing that's super cool and also very powerful is that you can now use that data to segment, right? So later, in a few weeks or months, I'll be able to run a campaign targeting folks that are currently using Bob's Supply House versus some other competitor, right? If I'm in, some industries, you need a lot of specific data. Here's just an example from the insurance world. I might want to know who their provider is for all these different lines of insurance, right? Again, just create some drop downs where I can point and click and capture that data quickly. Here's something from the mortgage business where I may need to know all kinds of stuff that's really esoteric, and I'm not going to get that often in my first phone call. It may take me, I have that first phone call, I get them on the phone and they say, yeah, I want to talk, but I'm busy right now, blah, blah, blah. And I got to have a second appointment with them to really get into all that and capture all that data. Well, that you want to measure, right? You want to measure what salespeople are just getting, the one or two basic things versus which ones are getting really deep with the customer and really collecting all the really vital information. Because that's a trainable thing, right? You can identify which salespeople are wrestling with that, and let's sit down and work with them. So, you can take the leads that came in this month and put together all your fields that you want your salespeople to collect when they talk to them, and, sort by those fields and kind of quality control the data that they're collecting for you, because you're going to use this from a marketing point of view. So you want to make sure, if they're not collecting it in some cases, let's know about that. But then also, is the data they're providing accurate, right? And again, communicate with them. Let them know, let the team know, Sally's doing a great job, but Sam's not. You know, just another couple of examples here. Create a little dashboard or something that shows you, you know, for your key fields, who's not filling them out. So right here, I can see that Jill and Dawn didn't even bother to input the basic status information for a whole bunch of their leads, right? So those two people I need to sit down and talk to, right? Well, that's pretty simple. But if I'm not measuring it, they're not going to do it. I can tell you that for sure. If I don't get up and go down the hall and say, hey, Dawn, take a look at this. What can we do about that? Then it's never going to change. And that's the one thing that can undermine your entire operation from this point of view, right? Is if you don't have the salespeople providing at least some level of information consistently, then everything else breaks down, you know, in terms of optimizing and managing, you know, ongoing follow through with leads that came in last month. Now what do we do with them? Well, these I don't know what to do with, right? They're just gone now. Same idea here. You know, based on where the lead came from, who's taken the most of them, and, you know, again, we got a problem with Sally. She's not even filling out where it came from a lot of times. Basic stuff like that. So you're measuring, you're using your CRM not just to measure things like pipeline and, you know, calls per day or meetings per week, or, you know, the other more typical down in the funnel, you know, near the close kind of metrics that we tend to focus on. But you're also measuring things that are just, are you helping to interface between the marketing and the sales funnel? Are you helping us keep these leads in the right place? Okay, so I think I'm just about on time. Just want to remind everybody, if you got any questions or anything, feel free to type them in there where it says questions in the little control panel, and I'll be happy to try and address them here before we get to the top of the hour. Just to kind of sum everything up, strategies for managing and automating lead management. It's worth it. It's an easy 10 to 20% increase in sales, but you have to make the investment in either technology or people or both. It's not just going to happen. How to create effective content and emails. Get started with what you have. Don't postpone getting started to create something that you think is beautiful. Get what you have out there in the real world, measure what happens, and then start adjusting and investing in what the data is telling you is working. Hold the salespeople accountable, educate them, measure what's happening, and keep them informed. Let them know that you're watching, that you're aware, and let them know what you expect. Okay, so next steps. A few things that you can do if you want to dig into this more. I mentioned earlier, my book, Inside Out Selling, is available now on Amazon, both Kindle and paperback versions. But since you've joined us for the webinar, if you'd like to get a free copy, go here to this page, and you can fill out the form there, and we'll ship you a free copy. And actually, all these links you're going to get in an email here later today. You can get a free copy of Email Marketing for Sales Teams. This is a short little ebook that we put together that's got 4 best practices, really well spelled out with lots of examples that you can go download on the website anytime. Our sales process assessment is a great investment of 20 minutes. We'll just jump on the phone and we'll talk about your sales process, and we'll identify your primary lead nurturing opportunities where you can have the most bang for the buck in the shortest amount of time. And we'll brainstorm a little bit about a good lead nurturing email, just to give you some ideas to sit down and create one. And then finally, you can create a free trial of Sales Nexus to automate your follow-up for all of your leads and the measurement and accountability for the salespeople. Okay, well, I really appreciate everybody's time today. I know you're all busy, and really appreciate you taking a little time to spend with us. As I said before, you'll be getting an email later today with links to all these assets that you can take advantage of. And if there's anything that I can personally do for you, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to help in any way I can. Hope you all have a great afternoon. Thank you very much.